Hello, hello, hello. I'm checking the mic. Is the mic sounding good? Guess we'll switch over. Hello, good evening, afternoon, morning, whatever time it is near you. Today we are hopefully getting some first prints done on this printer. So I've got a little bit of an itinerary written up. Kind of first of all, I wanted to talk about what happened last stream, then some of the stuff I did off stream, some of the troubles I've been having, and then what I want to get done this stream. So last stream we got all of the electronics on the V1 done. We got everything hooked up and made sure everything was connected and looking good. So yeah, we're good. The machine runs, we've got power to everything. Then we started to go through the kind of first initial setup and config. So obviously got Clipper installed on the Big Tree Tech, got our microprocessor for the screen and for the SKR Pico flash. And then we went ahead and started working through the config. So the initial setup process went fairly, well. Everything heated up. We got the PID tune done on this guy. The kind of area I got a little stuck in was with the sensorless homing. I got it done and I got it homing, but I just found it a little bit weird the way they kind of had stuff worded in the documentation. So I'm going to kind of talk about that a little bit, where I got tripped up and where I think they could clarify some things. I've actually put in some PRs or issues in GitHub to maybe help other people who might run into some of the same issues as me, and this will also kind of serve as that for that purpose. Then I've been having a little bit of issues with the Kirigami bed frame from Formbot, and I'm glad to say that I'm not the only person who had this issue. But basically, with the Kirigami frame, there is a thermal fuse right here. It's actually pretty hard for you guys to see, but right there is a little thermal fuse. And the hole for it is pre-drilled by Formbot, and it's actually so far outside that it starts to interfere with the frame, the Kirigami frame, if you compress the bed down, the bed springs down a lot to make sure you have plenty of Z clearance and don't crash into the bed, it actually starts to collide back there. I don't know if you can see it. And there's a couple reasons for this. So the way I have my bed currently, I have these little bed spacers in them in the bottom. And what they do is align the bed to either the front or the back of this little slot. So there's a little slot here and you can move the bed forward or backwards 3 millimeters. So I went ahead and moved it to the backmost position because that allows me, if you can kind of see here, to make sure I get the maximum amounts of print area up front. So if I move this forward, this print head would not be able to go forward enough to be able to print about 2 to 3 millimeters. If I move it kind of towards the back, you can see that we can pretty easily reach the backmost part of the bed. But yeah, I wanted to make sure this is a very small printer. You don't want to lose out on very much kind of build volume. So I decided it was best to move my heated bed here, I can't speak right now, to move it backwards. But that ends up causing the thermal fuse, which is right there, that white little thing, to push up and collide with the bed right here. So I kind of posted on the forums and a couple different places. I have heard that other people have run into this issue. I'm not the only person, but yeah, it seems that there's just some miscommunication and or Formbot didn't necessarily test all the different permutations of this. So basically, if you have it in the forward position, you're fine. But for whatever reason with mine, I don't know, my nozzle, my Hotend, whatever it might be, I need to have the bed in the backmost position, and it causes this issue. So I've made a note on the Kirigami GitHub. I've made a note to tell Formbot about it, and I'm letting everybody else know. So that was a little pain in the butt. The way I remedied it was to take the bed frame out and take it into the garage and give it a little once over with a Dremel. So I just took a sanding drum and kind of removed a little bit of material where it was kind of starting to collide. Not something you want to do with kind of a brand new 3D printer kit, but yeah, it ended up working out. It gave me all the clearance I need in order to be able to get the maximum Z distance and the maximum Y distance. So, you know, not ideal, but it was a solution that I found to get things working. Hopefully with my feedback, they can make the corrections, either move where the fuse is mounted in by like literally like 3 millimeters would be enough to not have that clearance issue. Or maybe they can have the Christoph, the maintainer of the Kirigami, the maker of the Kirigami, maybe he can make a revision to the actual board. So yeah, there are some other things that people have noted with the Kirigami bed from Formbot, mainly that it is a bit thick. It's a THICC. It's supposed to be exactly 2 millimeters thick, but I think with their powder coating process, it ends up making it about 2.5 millimeters thick, and that actually ends up playing issues with some of the printed parts that need to fit over it. For instance, this little Z collet thing, a Z nut holder, it ends up not being able to kind of support it in the right way. So there's some issues with the Formbot frame. Nothing that like nobody can get over. You know, I've been able to get through all this. I think most people will be able to get through it, but some of the things that you might notice with like a less expensive kit that is probably going to frustrate a few people. So I had that issue, and then let's see if I can show you guys what I did to try to remedy that. So let's turn on, what do you need to see? This? Yeah. So I went to the GitHub for this guy, and I just submitted an issue and noted that the Formbot bed thermal fuse collides with frame. I took a picture of it here. You can see pretty clearly exactly what I mean. When you start to compress the springs to make sure your bed won't crash, and so that you can slowly let it up, it ends up colliding before you can get enough space that the nozzle won't hit the bed. So it's just like literally the outside edge of this touches the inside edge of the frame. So it's kind of a very small kind of clearance tolerance issue. They can move that back by like 2 millimeters and it won't be a problem at all. So yeah, kind of a weird thing going on there, but submitted the issue. Hopefully Christoph can either make a note of it and see if he can make recommendations to Formbot to make some changes or whatever the case might be. The other issue I had was in the config that is provided for the firmware that talks about the process for doing sensorless homing and getting it set up. So if you go to the SKR Pico config, they give you, pretty clear instructions in here that tell you like what you need to do. There's all these comments that say you need to do this in this section, do this in this section. And one of the things you have to do is modify your motor currents for the home XY macro. So if you come down here to the macro, there is this little home current equals XX, and they tell you to replace the XX with a current value that is about 70% less than your run current. I think that this is just kind of a weird way to say that. Personally, I would rather it say make it 30% if that's what they actually mean, instead of saying 70% less. But you can see what they do here is they take the home current and they multiply it by the run current, and that's what sets the current during the homing operation. So if that's what they want to do, they want to multiply, then I don't think that this should be an actual current value. It sounds like this should be a percentage or some kind of, a coefficient essentially that says you want your run current to be lower during homing, so make this some kind of a decimal like 0.7, 0.6 that is good for your motor. So I thought that was a little confusing, so I ended up making a little bit of a issue for this guy as well. So here I just said the process I went through. I used this CFG. I tried to follow the instructions for setting my motor currents. I tried to follow the instructions the way I interpreted them for this, and it ended up like with crazy low values that made it basically the run current ended up being too low during homing, and that caused issues. So I couldn't ever find a sensitivity that would get it to home. So yeah, that was a little bit weird, but I ended up figuring it out. So you basically just need to set that to something like 0.7 so that it will multiply your base run current by 0.7, lowering it a little bit so it doesn't cause any big crashes, and then it resets it at the end. So I just think that they phrased it wrong, and that's maybe not what they actually meant. But yeah, hopefully this will help avoid confusion by other people. So I'm going to go ahead and tweet out that we are streaming, so that maybe a couple other people can join in on the fun. Share it as well on a few of the discords for 3D printing and Voron people. And we'll see if anybody else joins in on the stream. So off stream, I kind of already mentioned one of the things I did, which was taking the Dremel to the bed and just removing a little bit of that material from the bed that was causing the collision. And now I have enough clearance. So with the bed as compressed as possible now, I can move the print head around and it won't crash in, so that now when we do the kind of bed leveling process, we know that we won't be crashing into the bed and we have enough room. The other thing I did was then go in with a re-anodizing tool, aka my black Sharpie, and just kind of filled in the spots where the paint had been removed from filing it away and using a Dremel on it. And I think most people would be hard pressed to tell. Probably Christoph, the guy who designed it, could look at it and say, hey, that's not the right kind of profile, but I think most people would be pretty hard pressed to tell that I've made that modification. So hopefully I did a good enough job. The other thing I did was to go ahead and reprint some of these guys. So these are some cable management 3D prints that a guy made and shared on the Voron user mods, and they're basically a 3D printed version of some of the cable channels that LDO and some other folks provide. They're like little cable raceways. And I printed them originally out of this blue ABS, and I actually found it to be a bit too brittle. So basically, if I start to take this guy off, it kind of just slides off. If you put any bit of force on these, they basically just snap off. So I'm not sure if it's my print settings or if it's kind of more to do with just the properties of ABS, but I reprinted these in PETG. So hopefully the PETG would be a little bit better. I also have rechanged my mic kind of setup again, so let me know if you guys can hear me clearly or if it's cutting out too much or whatever the case might be. So we're going to replace this guy and then some of the ones that I put on the bottom as well with some of these newly printed ones. So I'm going to go ahead and actually shut down the printer, or the Pi rather. It's always recommended to shut down before powering off so that you don't mess up your Pi image. Yeah, just hit the shutdown button. It takes like 2 seconds for most Pis to shut down. Then I'm gonna hit the power and unplug this guy. And we are going to, I need a way to set this up so that the knob doesn't hit. We've got this knob right here on the front of the display, and if you try to set it on the front, it will hit. So let's figure out a way we can stack this. This seemed to have worked last time. I've got a bunch of these that I used to organize parts, and now they're empty. They were full of parts that are now on the printer. So that will allow me to set it up, hopefully give you guys a nice view. And I guess we just need to start pulling cables out of this thing, which is a bit of a pain. Kind of hurts to think about. And I'm going to keep them plugged in for now. And I'll see if it ends up being beneficial to kind of unplug everything from the connectors and completely reroute stuff. But I wouldn't be surprised if more of these little side pieces snapped while I'm doing this, just because they're so fragile right now. Yep, they're breaking. But I just want to get this done before we get our first print done. I don't think it should take too long. But you can see a lot of these are pretty good in terms of their length. They're like kind of the perfect length, but some of them are a bit too long. Mainly the motor cables seem to be way too long than they need to be. And I keep bumping into the mic with my head. So this is VHB'd on, and we need to get it off. Which has proven to be a little bit more challenging than I imagined, because there's not much you can grab onto here to start to get these off. I could unclip these guys, one of these, like the Pi, kind of move them out of the way. Maybe that'll give us a little bit more room. I think I need a bigger prying device, aka screwdriver. It's kind of funny how sometimes it feels like the VHB tape doesn't stick very well when you want it to, and things will fall off. And it does stick super well basically anytime you're trying to get it off. I'm trying to do this without scratching up the back panel too much, but so what's a good option here? Go ahead and lift the microphone up a little bit so it's not hitting my head. Sorry if that was noisy. But I just want to get this old one out so we can put a new one in. These are just so fragile and brittle. I'm really surprised. Like, I printed them at basically all the Voron specs. So 0.2 layer height. When I printed them in PETG, I did up the layer height, because generally that's a good way to increase part strength. There are fewer layers to delaminate. And I think I'm gonna have to just move all the electronics out of the way. Ugh. Okay. A big portion of it off. Okay, there we go. So now we want to replace it with one of these black ones printed out of PETG. I'm gonna place this guy back in there. I do kind of like these cleat systems for holding the electronics. Seem to work fairly well. I can get them on and off pretty consistently. Got a rat's nest of wires to deal with. The A and B motor. So where do I want to put this? I was thinking about also putting another one up here to just hide some of the wires that come out of the umbilical. Ugh, this looks messy. I can disconnect these two guys. I know exactly where they go. I'm going to put a piece of tape on the motor that goes to the right, which is this guy. Tape. So this is the B motor. I guess I can throw myself up there so you guys can get a different view too. This is the B motor, this is the A motor. I thought this was going to be much quicker, to be honest. I just wanted to get this done and move on to printing. Yeah, so I think at the very least I can put this main one in and tape it down. And that was my main concern. So let me get the VHB, which is where? Why do I move stuff? It's one of those things where you see something every 30 seconds until you need it and then you can't find it. I think I might have taken it out to the garage. I will be back in 1 second. All right, I am back with VHB tape. Let's just get some tape thrown onto this guy. Scissors aren't very good. Actually got some better ones. Going to do 2 pieces because it really doesn't need all that much. Honestly, I could have just put this one piece in the middle and it would have been fine because that was a pain in the butt to get off. So I'm going to do that. We're just going to do 1 piece, smack dab in the middle, and I doubt it's going to be able to go anywhere because that took me a lot of effort. Do I want it to be centered or do I want it to be a little bit over towards the pie because there's room over there? Visually speaking, it would look better centered. Oh great, one of these broke too. Starting to think it's maybe my print settings that's causing it. Get this guy out of there for now. We can get the cable management perfect later. That's probably not what you guys want to see. I want to see some printing. Snaps this guy back down. without pinching any cables. All right, let's get all this passed back through where it needs to be. All this stuff coming up from the bottom. You can run through the middle of the track. A lot of wire crossover here. Here we go. Okay. Top. That was right here. Come on. Ow. Hit my head on the mic again. This guy comes up from the bottom. This is for the NeoPixel and the bed mount. Just super necessary. Come out here. Coming up from the bottom. This is our B wire. This is the Z one. Huh. All right, I think we're almost done. If I can just get all these passed under here. Guy passes out there. And then these two run up to where they need to go. And hopefully I can tuck in the excess. I think we'll be good. I did go ahead and mount the spool holder, so hopefully that lets you guys know how serious I am about printing today. We're pushing plastic. All right, if all these say stay still, I think we're good. And where's the cover for this guy? Over here. Does look a tiny bit askew. The nice thing about the PETG, since it's not quite as brittle, I think we should be able to kind of snap all these in instead of having to slide it on. Maybe. Let's be working. Yeah, there we go. So being able to snap that on is a whole lot better than having to slide it all the way off. So yeah, I think that cable management looks okay for now. I definitely want to try to clean some stuff up, make the runs look a little bit better. I'm a little obsessive about cable management in some regards, but also just want to get printing. So I do have the spool holder here, as I said, and we will not worry about the bottom cables because we want to see some prints. All right, let me get this guy plugged back in, powered on. I can throw this away and all these little pieces away. And let's hop over to Clipper. Refresh, we should be able to get back into the interface. Let's make sure all our temperatures are looking right. Extruder, heater bed, the Pi, the Pico. We can go ahead and home Z. That's looking okay. Hello, Chris. How's it going? I've been working on some stuff to try to enhance the stream a little bit. You were just watching the previous stream? Well, thank you. So I can do this now and kind of make it clear what question or comment I'm talking about. So I'm trying to add a little bit of production value to the stream. It's not like we have like a ton of people in here all the time, but yeah. So homing Z works, homing X works, homing Y did not work. Oh, I think I still have my... So one thing I was talking about was the instructions they give in the macros for this are a little confusing to me. Like there's it says like replace home current with a percentage that's, or with the current that's 70% less. But then when you look at the actual macro, it multiplies it. So it seems like it doesn't want a percentage or a run current, it wants a percentage. So here, if I look for home X. So yeah, this was causing me a lot of trouble when I was trying to get, what do you call it? Sensorless homing to work. So it says, replace XX with a current value that is about 70% less. So 70% less of 100 is 30%. So I changed this to 30% of my run current. And then I realized that when it is doing the sensorless homing, it is multiplying your run current by that smaller current, which is making it even smaller. So I think what they want this to be is something like 0.7. So it will decrease your main current, your main run current by 0.7 just for the sensorless homing, and then it sets it back to the main current at the end. So I submitted an issue about this because I think it's a little unclear, and I think we need to go in and change our values there. Sometimes I feel like the only thing that gets some people to watch is giveaways. Yeah, I do have some stuff I think that could make for some good giveaways. I've ordered a few more PCBs of the Voron ruler, which I think is really, really cool. I've been using it. It says Voron. I think Heart K developed this. And some other PCBs and stuff like that. So maybe that will entice some folks. Yeah, and if you run sensorless homing too slow, it won't always work properly, at least in my experience. Yeah, if you get your homing current too low and or you run it too low or too fast, it can mess things up. I know a lot of the Voron guys don't seem to like it in terms of some of the bigger printers like the V2.4 and Trident, because they don't trust it for being able to accurately hit like the one pin that they have. So yes, this is way too low. So this was the value as recommended by them, and it's way too low. So if I change that to 0.7, then it will take my original run current, multiply it times that 0.7, and that will give me a lower current. So that's what I've noticed a lot of people have here. So we're gonna save and restart, and it should home fine now. So I reverted it back to exactly what I had so that I could kind of like demonstrate it. And I think you saw that that did not home very, very well. But now that we've saved and restarted, if we home X, that looks good. Home Y, that looks good. And yeah, we already home Z, but it's nice not having not having extra flimsy in stops and wiring. Yes, it is nice that like that's at least 4 wires that we don't have to run down to the rest of the board. So all right, now I think we need to do our bed screw adjust. So we did the PID auto tune, we verified that, we did the motors checks. We finally got this in stop thing working after having some trouble because our current was too low. Bed locating we don't have to worry about. The fine 0 point we don't have to worry about. Another thing I find is a little overwhelming is the fact that there's one setup guide for all the printers, and I kind of understand why they do that from a like a efficiency standpoint, because you know there's a lot of shared stuff between all the printers. But when you're just looking for V0 stuff and you have to scroll through and there's all this stuff, I've seen several people get tripped up trying to do this stuff. So the in-stop location we don't have to worry about because we don't have a moving Z in-stop anymore. Bed screws we do need to do. Bed screw adjust. So my understanding is that this takes us through like this loop. Where it moves it to the front bed screw and moves it to a certain value, and we need a slip of paper. And we're going to, so I've basically screwed the bed down as far as I could right now. And now we're going to unscrew it until it's at the proper Z height. Kind of like a straight up regular printer. Trying not to put any pressure on the bed with my hands while I do this. That's a mistake I used to make sometimes when leveling a bed. that's grabbing fairly well. If we say that we did adjust that, it's going to move to 0.2. Screw this guy until the paper grabs. It's fairly grabby. We say adjusted, and then we do the third point. And the interesting thing about this macro is that since we told it was adjusted, it's going to take us around again until we get to a point where we don't have to adjust any of them. All right, so adjusted. So now it's going to take us through at least one more time until we get to a point where we didn't have to do any adjusting. So that's too tight. Yeah, that just grabs the paper. Adjusted. As much as bed leveling isn't a huge issue on small bed, I do want to experiment with auto bed leveling. Sensor on my nav to make it more foolproof. If you ever decide to prove, I think, well, is this mic keeps slowly sneaking its way into frame. I think my mic stand is dying. I do think auto bed leveling is kind of a feature that's going to need to be kind of more massively adopted. We'll say adjusted. In order for 3D printing to be like a thing that's in everybody's living room and an appliance that like most people need to have, that was actually pretty perfect. But we're just gonna go through it one more time and hopefully that's pretty good, except that's pretty good, except and I think that was a little bit loose. I'm gonna hit accept. I think that's pretty good. Finding a place to mount a sensor is a challenging part on a printer this small. Absolutely, like I don't know where it would go unless you can do some kind of a clicky like docked sensor. Maybe that's an option. The set it and forget it aspect, especially if you only need a couple points in that bed, yeah. Getting blown up by some notifications. So what's next? That's where I gotten stuck last time in the initial setup. I don't think there's very much more. We don't need quad level, the offset adjusting, fine tuning the extruder calibration E-steps. So that's something I plan on doing hot. So I think we can do a little bit more to prepare for the first print. So I think we need to get our Bowden tube run, our reverse Bowden. Which I think is this guy, the 4x3. which has a looser internal diameter. The clicky one, they said, is only good for a bed that doesn't move at all. V0 moves up and down. Okay, gotcha. So we want to pop this guy into the Hotend. This is very, very thin walled Bowden tube. Like I just compressed it a little bit, just pressing it down. Then it is going to run through the back of this. This is a little mod I printed that gives some cable relief or strain relief to the cable right here. And then it also has a little guide for the Bowden tube, which I just thought was handy. Probably not necessary, but we'll get that run. I'll leave it a little long for now. And then it passes through the foot, I think, to come out of the other side of the foot near the spool holder. It's an interesting cable path, or a Bowden path, especially when the Bowden tube doesn't want to cooperate. Are we zoomed in? No. I'm just trying to pass him through. Kind of funky doing this with the printer that is on. Then there's a hole in this foot somewhere. Right here? Maybe I should have gone the other way. Maybe I should do the reverse. Or the reverse Bowden. Bowden? Bowden? I'm just having a hard time getting it run through this foot. I think I'm going to take my reamer to it. Just got a little M4 reamer. And I need my little chuck. So I think I'm gonna zoom out with the overhead camera a bit. I think it's too tight for you guys to see stuff. Okay, so I've got this little chuck for like a screwdriver. So that I can put the reamer in here, tighten it up, and then ream some of these holes that seem to be just a little bit too tight. So you can see some of the plastic is kind of getting pulled off. Doesn't take a lot. Let's see if that will help it. Yep. That's all it needed. So I found myself using these reamers a lot when like it's not appropriate for a something like a what would you call a deburring tool, because the deburring tool can kind of only really do like the outside edge. This is very fussy and finicky trying to get this Bowden tube through. Okay. I think doing it from the outside near the spool holder and running it up is the best way to do it. Come on. Runs right by the fan now. We need to go up and through you. Finally, up and through to the tool head. And we don't need it to be that long. Interesting path. Guess works okay since it's direct drive. Yeah. If it was Bowden, I'd want a shorter path. Yeah, ideally, if it was actually a Bowden, you wouldn't want it nearly this long. The retraction would be horrible, or the stringing would be horrible, causing you to need to set your retraction really high. So it's a very interesting Bowden path. But I guess we can now cut this. I have one of the Capricorn cutters somewhere. I feel like I get 50% of my stream is looking for stuff that I misplaced. Where did I put it? Really, 50% of my life is looking for stuff I've misplaced. Capricorn cutter is blue. I don't know, I called myself cleaning up yesterday and I ruined myself. Doesn't help that all of my 3D printed parts are also blue. Or most of them. I don't know what I did with it. I did also get these. These are just some M3 20mm standoffs, and I'm gonna replace these kind of brass ones eventually with the nicer looking ones. Absolutely not necessary. I probably could have just done as Steve suggested and shrink wrapped this, and it would look, you wouldn't even notice, but that was the joke, yeah. I literally just saw it. Did I take it out to the garage too? Because I used it to populate this guy. So this is the new stealth burner, mini stealth burner that I'm going to put on to replace this one. This is the R1 revision. So I just populated it with a Revo and the nicer honey badger fans that I got. And eventually I'll swap that in. And I cut a Bowden tube for this guy with that cutter. And then now it's up and walked away. I sound like my mom. I guess it just up and walked away. I don't even really need to use it. I could use like 5 other tools. Now I'm just kind of like mad I don't have it. You ever get like that? Like, you're just perturbed at yourself for like misplacing something and you can't move on until you find it? Where's the hobby knife? So let's pick a spool of filament. Got a nice little assortment down here from MatterHackers, a lot of ABS. More ABS, more ABS. Here's some yellow PLA. That might show up nice on camera. Let's try that. It's okay. It's always the last place you looked, because why would you keep looking if you... Yeah. I used to hate that saying as a kid. Now I'll find myself saying it more and more. I guess it's that whole we've become our parents thing. So this is MatterHackers Build Series PLA. I've had pretty good results with it. All of their PLA and ABS. So far, I just throw it in the printer, hit generic on the profile, and it prints really, really well. So if I put this guy on here, it can kind of give me an idea of how much Bowden tube I actually need. Probably, I'll leave it a little long at first. But really, that doesn't need to be a perfectly parallel cut. So we're gonna go with yellow. It should be very contrast against the blue and black. Very contrasty. They really tape this one edge. Let's snip this boy. Oh, that was a bad idea. Gonna have to unravel like that much of that to make sure we don't get a tangle. And then let's see how easy it is to pass this up and to the tool head. I guess that's why this is 3mm internal diameter for the reverse Bowden tube, so that it's pretty easy to guide it through. So it's very easy to push this up and through. I was worried it was going to be a little bit of a problem, but it's not. Now let's hop over to our desktop. And what's going to be a good view for you guys? Overhead? No, I don't know. But let's go to Clipper. Let's move our bed down. We'll home it and then move it down. So our Z offset should be really, really close. We might need to like fine tune it later, but I think this goes to like 30. Move it way out of the way. And then let's heat up our extruder to, what do they suggest for their filaments? 180 to 220. Let's do exactly in the middle, 200. So one good thing about the CHC Hotend that I ended up not using because it cracked was that it heated up super, super fast. Like literally it'd probably be about to 200 by now. This kind of copper alloy block takes quite a bit longer. I'm gonna turn off all the motors and move the bed to the middle. And I guess it would be easier to do this actually right now without the reverse Bowden, because it's going to be very difficult to measure. To do our E-steps calibration, but Let me open this guy up, feed it in, close him, so I can fine tune how tight it is later. But we are at 200, so let's tell it to do the first extrude. Is it going to be helpful to have the C920? Well, it can't really see anything, so not all that helpful, but there we go. Let's tell it to extrude 25 millimeters to start. So the hot end I have in here is the Fadis Dragon High Flow. Let's up it to 50 millimeters. And it is flowing very, very nicely. So since this is a direct drive, I could take the nozzle off and do a cold E-steps calibration, which I think some people prefer. But I mean, if you're going to be doing these E-step calibrations per filament, and or every time you make any change, I feel like most people with direct drives just kind of do it hot. And I know Andrew Ellis, whose guide I tend to follow for tuning, he just does it hot on most of his printers, and it doesn't seem to make a huge difference to him. So break out my trusty red ruler, and we'll do the desktop up here and the C920 right here. Aim the C920 up a little bit. So we are going to take this little piece of black tape, which is basically permanently on here. Oh, and this guy's in the way now. Jeez, all over the place. Take this black piece of tape, mark it at 120 millimeters. And then I'm going to measure off 120 millimeters from the top of this guy, apply the tape to the filament, and then we are going to tell it to extrude 100 millimeters. Let's go to Andrew's guide. He's got some nice commands for that. Advanced tuning, just tuning. Extruder calibration. So send an M83 to tell it to move relative. And then send it 100 millimeters at 1 millimeter per second. So I think he uses this very slow feed rate because if you are doing this hot, you want to make sure that your hot in isn't kind of your flow rate isn't kind of it's as at least restrictive as possible, basically. So we're telling it to extrude 100 millimeters very, very slowly as this continues to creep into frame. Having all sorts of difficulties tonight. That was probably a nice long call. Sorry about that. It is still flowing very, very slowly. But I think if you're going to do a hot E-steps calibration, doing it with the very, very slow feed rate is a pretty good idea. It just kind of takes the restrictiveness of the flow rate out of the equation. We're making some spaghetti down there. I do kind of want to move this camera a tiny bit. So I'm hopefully a little bit more in frame, center frame. All right, has it stopped extruding yet? I can barely tell. I think it has. Now we are going to take our ruler and measure the actual distance extruded for the remaining. And the remaining is about 22 millimeters. So it's only extruded 98. And he's got a nice little equation up here. Got to cross multiply and divide. So what's our current E steps? Or rotation, I guess, is the proper thing to say in Clipper. Uh, 22.23. Notepad. New equals 22.23. There we go. Times 100 divided by actual extrusion distance, which is 120 minus 22. That equals 22.23 times 98.98. Bust out the calculator. 22.23 times 0.98. 21.79 we'll go with. That was pretty close. 21.79. Save and restart. Open up printer config again. Heat it back up to 200, which we barely lost any heat. We're going to remark and rerun the whole process. Exactly 120. I love that the console, you can just hit up twice to get that command, up twice to get that command, and let it go. Any comments on this sort of method of E-steps calibration, Chris? Do you prefer to do it hot? Do you prefer it cold? One really great thing about a Revo, or it's a Revo, is that at any time, if you wanted to do a cold E-steps calibration, you can just unscrew the nozzle it takes a little while. And then you could just pass filament straight down through it, and you can do a cold extrusion calibration on a direct drive. Very, very easy. technically it should be tracking the E-steps of the extruder itself more than the hot end, so in that case it doesn't really matter. Gotcha. I've seen some people do E-steps calibration and they keep their feed rate very, very high, and you can almost see the extruder like struggling to push the plastic through when they do it hot, which I think is just, obviously you're going to be limited there not by the extruder but by the flow rate of the nozzle. But yeah, I don't think it matters too much if you're doing it reasonably. Okay, I think it's done. Remeasure. And we are bang on 20 millimeters. So, what was the difference? We went from 22.23 flow rate or power of the motor, sure. We went from 22.23. I'm going to throw that 22.23 back in there as a kind of reference to let me know what the original one was. Let me save and close. And yeah, let's go ahead and retract that filament. We can unload. Gosh, trying to untangle itself or tangle itself. Push it back up through the bottom tube so we don't get any more tangles. And I think we are pretty much ready for our first print. We might need to dial in the Z offset a tiny bit, but extrude 50 for me. We're not fed into it properly. No, we were not. Okay. Even 5 is pretty slow on the feed rate. Alrighty then, let's get some heat into the heated bed. I mean, PLA, we don't need a ton. I'm gonna do 70. And let me bring up the slicer. So I have been using Orca Slicer the most when I'm not printing on my Prusa. When I print on the Prusa, I tend to use Prusa Slicer. But there's a lot of cool features of Orca Slicer. I like that you can add multiple bed plates. So if you're organizing a project like a 3D printer and you want to do certain sets of prints together, certain ones in certain colors, you can kind of add more filaments. This is of course a feature that Bamboo Slicer created, but I'm really liking it just for organizing my stuff. And that's kind of the main reason I've been using it. So we need to find our calibration 3D prints. Do I have a Voron cube in here? I would think I do. I've been doing a lot of kind of Nomi prints for or calibration prints for Nomi. Where's the Voron cube at? There we go. There we go. So I'm just going to use the default profile. I guess we can take a look. On generic PLA, what's the temperature? 220 is kind of hot for this stuff. Let's do 200 because that seemed to extrude pretty well. Volumetric flow rate should be a lot higher than this. Dragon high flow. Max flow rate. I've searched for that in the past. About 35, according to a random person on Reddit. This says 62, which seems kind of high. Who do you believe in this case? Vegas is probably going to be pretty high. Oh, Andrew actually has some quoted ones for this. He says the Dragon High Flow is about 24. So let's put that in as our max volumetric limitation, and we'll save this as... I mean, we can do a max test later, but let's save this as MatterHackers build PLA. If you have any insights, Chris, into things I might be doing wrong for this, let me know. 220 or 270 first layer, 60 remaining layers, max volumetric flow rate. Nothing yet, okay. Cooling, I really don't know much about the cooling properties of this this tool head very much yet. Overrides. We need to do our start and end G code for the printer. No, for the printer, Brian. Machine G code. Oh, that's got a lot of stuff in there. M190s, I tend to not want those in there. Print start. Oh, these are both commented out. Just got a text from my friend, 1 second. I think those look good though. Nozzle temperature initial layer, bed temperature initial layer. Let me see what these are called in the macro. Extruder and bed. Let me make sure that matches up with our print start. Finds, print start. The variables. There's nothing in here. This is the bare bones print start. I think Andrew also has a useful macros. Where's his print start? He has that published somewhere. Have you seen this this page, Chris? Here is his print start, which I tend to like. Bed and Hotend. No, ordering a board for your, what board are you looking at? We don't have a temperature or chamber temperature set up yet. Right now I'm trying to put a duet board in a CR10 V3. That's an interesting upgrade. Is it gonna have a lot of like enhanced pieces of functionality, or? I still haven't tried out RepRap firmware. Mostly can't get the stock firmware working. Oh, yeah. $200. Man, that bed starts to lose heat surprisingly fast, I guess. Chunky but tiny. Go back to the machine. Okay, so I think our print start looks good. The board I'm looking at for the nav is the BTT with the built-in Pi board. Is that the Manta? I think theirs is called. So we are going to want to get this guy nice and close up. But it's probably going to need to be higher, right, when the bed starts printing. The Manta, yeah. Okay, so we need to copy this IP address. Maybe I will just trust whatever they had in there. Connect. To upper IP test works correctly. Okay. Slice plate. It looks so gigantic on that plate. And I guess we're gonna send it. Upload and print. Print start. Dictionary object has no attribute Hotend. Okay, so our start macro is not correct. What were they called in the slicer again? Extruder. We need Hotend. Save. Guess we need to delete this guy. G-code view, G-code file. Go back to the dashboard. Back to the slicer. Slice plate, replace that one line of text, and send. I love how fast this is. I use Octoprint on several of my other printers, and like uploading a file to them, I let the temps get down. But it looks like that macro unknown command exclude object define. Is there exclude object in that macro? Here? It's saying there's a definition of exclude macro, exclude object, which I'm not aware of, but I wish it would have a little bit more like telling you where it's talking about. It's a little bit behind chat, but basically it had an error saying exclude object define, but I don't know where that is. I put a Bondtech extruder, Revo Hotend, and VO Touch on the CR10, but can't get firmware working. Stock firmware, you can't get rid of the filament runout sensor, and it's always causing issues. On all my Creality machines, I'm running TH3D unified firmware. It's fairly good. Like, they do a good job of making it kind of approachable for people. So Hotend 200 bed equals 70. What? Oh, it's missing an equal sign right here. Well, that's funny. Yeah, TH3D I tried, but the BO Touch settings always mess up. Many people have complained. Okay, I've never used the BO Touch. I use their easy ABL or whatever it's called. That was funny that the macro was just missing an equal sign, unless I did that somehow. All right, third attempt. Pico files. I think it will replace, I guess we can find out. Let's find out if it will automatically overwrite a file when you upload a file with presumably the same name. It's so fast. Oh, I've been forgetting to do this. But it's just me and you in here, so I think I'm probably referring to you. I don't know where this exclude object define is. Is that an option inside of here? Output exclude objects. Oh yeah, it's a default setting, which I need to turn off. Okay, good to know. So yeah, this is a fork of a fork of a fork of a fork. So it's Orca Slicer, which is a fork of Bamboo Slicer, which is a fork of Prusa Slicer, which is a fork of Slick 3R. Like slicer wars out there. Okay, we're homing. I'm hovering over the emergency stop button. What's going to be the best view for this? Oh, let me get you out of the way. The close-up cam is good? Okay. I'm not getting any filament coming out yet. Too close to the bed? Here it comes. It's moving. That's kind of awesome to see. I actually have a view for just this camera. Look at her go. That first layer is not going to be very nice. It's shaking the desk kind of quite a bit. It's the whole table is printing or shaking. So I'm going to look at some of the speeds it had set up. First layer was 50 millimeters per second. First layer infill was 105. Other layers, 120 for outer walls, 200 for inner walls, 200 for basically everything else. So 100, 120, 200. What was the estimated time? 36 minutes for this guy. She's printing! The motors are surprisingly quiet for being in full-on spread cycle. I'm pretty sure they're in spread cycle. Let's double check that. In our printer.cfg, I'm going to need to split a lot of this stuff out eventually. TMC 2209, Stealth Chop threshold is 0. So that's full on spread cycle. I'm very happy with the motor noise. The fans are going, they're 3010s, so they're going to be fairly loud to move some air, but this is exciting. My first Voron printer is printing. First Core XY printer. First kind of kit of this kind of intensity. Like a proud papa. How far do you think you are from getting your first, I guess, prototype of nav printing? I know you said you had to get a couple different objects. You said that earlier. Oh, and in terms of that, the BT Tech Pi, I think it uses the same CMB or CB1 image as my the Pi I'm using on here. And it works really well. I used their pre-set up kernel that had Clipper, main cell, sonar, time lapse, just like everything that you would expect to be on there was on there. I just had to update them. So that was really nice. It flashed super easy, easier than when I use Raspberry Pi Imager, to be honest. So depending on how that light hits it, it's looking extremely clean to you. Oh, I can kind of see some extrusion inconsistencies, but fairly good. Fairly happy with it. Probably a few weeks. The initial panels were just low-cost ones for mock-up, so ordering nicer ones that are thicker, fixing a few things, then a few other parts were ordered. Gotcha. And I mean, this isn't even like aggressive. These are pretty like conservative speeds from what I've heard. 100 and 120. I think it's one reason it's shaking so much is because it's not evenly set up on this mat right here. Yeah, you can probably do 180 easily or more after you ensure all is working properly. Yeah, I want to get everything working pretty well. I'm probably going to go through most of Andrew Ellis's guide in another stream to kind of fully tune things up. His guide's pretty good. It's pretty like exhaustive, to be honest. He walks through extruder calibration, bed surface preparation and handling, washing with dish soap, getting a good first layer squish, which I'm definitely going to have to work on because that first layer was atrocious, partially because the filament wasn't completely loaded. But then he goes pressure advance and linear advance. I like his pattern method. He's got this tool for tuning in pressure advance, and that makes it pretty easy to see what's going on. It generates some G-code based on properties you set up. So do some linear advance, extrusion multiplier. This is kind of a per filament thing, but I like to tune it in and get it set for like a material type, a generic material type for most PLAs that are kind of like these new kind of pro PLA that don't give off that super sweet smell. I like to try to get a baseline PA for that I can start off with, and then if I notice that I need to tune it a little bit more, then you know, tune it for that specific filament for extrusion multiplier. I meant extrusion multiplier. I think I said pressure advance, but cooling and layer times. Hopefully our print doesn't look quite like that. Retraction. He has like a retraction test he recommends using out of Super Slicer. Perimeter infill perimeter overlap. He has some guides on that. And then some talks about step over, and then he gets into advanced where he talks about determining a maximum flow rate, determining motor currents, and then maximum speeds and acceleration. He has an interesting little macro that you run, and it helps you kind of figure out what the physical limits of the machine are. And then I think you can finally do some stuff like a max flow test print and run input shaper, and then you can kind of see, okay, the maximum my machine can do physically is this many millimeters per second and millimeters per second squared, but obviously I a lot of times you can't actually print at those speeds. So, you know, you can kind of see what that difference is and see if you can kind of push up towards that upper edge. Then you can get a lighter X carriage. I have seen some of those. 24/7 is coming out with his own X rail, right? Here's the support me button. I need to remember to buy Ellis a coffee. It's for 7.2 X rail.
This
where's his newest video? I think where he talked about it being for sale, right? Is this it? Oh, this is the actual linear rail. I was on Aliexpress earlier. They have lightweight rails on there too. No idea the quality though. Yeah, I guess that's a... Oh no, you're too big. I need to figure out the sizing on that. That's still legible. The same concept. Where is his at? Is it in the motion section? Stronger ready-made carbon fiber beam. Is this his? Yeah, okay. 28 bucks isn't bad. Did you just send it to me, Chris? Yes, you did. Okay, this one is 22, and it's a little bit more of a like humped out piece of metal. Do you think any SLM machines will ever get to the point where they can precisely print something like this? What do they quote the weights at? Give me the specs. $18.8 grams. Oh, theirs is technically lighter. Probably, but I'm not an SLM expert. Need to get to those big trade shows. Yeah. I'm near Virginia Tech, and I know that they have some SLM machines around here at the university. So I can definitely tell the print's not perfect. It might be hard to tell from that C920. So it says it's a 15% lower, so this one is even more percentage. I was hoping to test that Hotend that came in this printer as the default one. So the reason I put in the Dragon High Flow is that it is an option from Formbot, straight out of the box. Formbot Voron 0.2. The SEO on these sites are so terrible. You search for something and it gives you like the first 3 results or something completely else. They don't have the option here for anything else, but so I thought it was really good that this came with the Pi. I know some of the boards are coming with like a Manta or something similar, a built-in Pi, but this you could use for something else down the road, which is kind of cool. Moons motors, stainless steel. Where's the Hotend? This guy. So they call it a V6 CHC. So under this was a ceramic ring that went around it to hold and get hot really, really fast. And that's what cracked when I was trying to hot tighten the nozzle. But I really wanted to test this out and see kind of what the max flow rates were on it. Noticing a little bit of stringing inside the infill, but I guess that's where you want it if you're going to have it, right? Let's see if I can. Digitally zoom? Does that look? That just punches in one level. It's a slider, but it's like. Okay, I guess that's still kind of visible. The dynamic range on these webcams is pretty terrible. The comment is still on the screen. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I have to. I wonder if they have a setting to automatically make it time off, but I have to click it to remove it. Let's go back to 2020. So I think when the shadow's there a little bit, you can maybe see some of the extrusion inconsistencies. Oh, it's really blowing it out. Yeah, the whole table is shaking, so it kind of looks like the bed is moving up and down a bunch, but I don't think it is. Well, no, I don't think it's the bed. Well, I mean, it is Z-hopping every once in a while. Yeah, you read my mind. Let's check and see what the default settings were. I didn't look at that profile like at all. Where's that going to be in retraction settings for the printer? Extruder. Z-hop when retracting 0.4 millimeters is kind of high, isn't it? I feel like I try to stay around 0.1 or 0.2. Oh, I got that to work finally. Be sure to like, subscribe, and find me on other socials. Seems a bit high, but it shouldn't cause an issue. Yeah, I'll probably turn it down. Go record it real quick from the other side. Snap a couple pics. But yeah, I'm pretty happy and pretty excited. Especially last stream where I wanted to hopefully push some plastic, but then I ran into like the sensorless homing thing, and then when I tried starting to adjust the bed, I noticed that the fuse was running into it. I got a little bit dejected, not gonna lie. But no. So what do we have left in the manual? Close that apparently. I've done all the initial stuff and done the first print. So they have tuning guides. Uh-oh. YouTube says there is an error with the stream. Chris, is the stream still going well for you? I got a notification from YouTube saying it was it dropped for a few seconds. Okay, not sure why. Yeah, definitely have some under extrusion at certain spots, but hopefully everything will be taken care of with some tuning. Back to normal. Awesome. Thanks for letting me know. A little nerve-wracking when get a YouTube a notification like that from YouTube. It's got a maintenance guide. But hopping back over to the desktop, I skipped ahead to get the spool holder mounted so that you can do some printing today. Finished electronics. Need skirts and panels. I already did the skirts. I did go ahead and print some skirt backers. So these little guys that will go on the inside of the skirts and just kind of add a little flash of color. Guess they also add a little bit of dust protection as well. But I've got a bunch of these so I can glue them to the back. You can print them in a dual color print, obviously, or if you have an IDEX machine or something like that. But since I got these from PIF and that wasn't an option, I figured I could just glue them on for this first guy. So skirts and panels. Skirts are done. I did print out some options to replace these with like LED diffusers, so that's something I can do down the road is like an upgrade. Have all those skirts done, have the display on there. The display is working. Bottom panel is next. So I can throw that on. This guy I don't really need to worry about, I don't think, because we have the umbilical. This motor plate I already have up there. I already have the spool holder on it. It'll have to come off once we put on the panels, but okay, there's two parts to the rear panel with these hinges for the top hat. Lots of M3 screws. The side panels. This involves a lot of VHB tape and weather stripping tape, I think. And from what I recall watching other streamers, this is actually fairly time consuming doing this part. Put magnets on for the door. And then top hat extrusion top hat. Putting together some extrusion, throwing on the clips and the panels. That shouldn't take too long. Getting it connected up to the hinge. And then there's this little cam locking system, which they've actually replaced. And then assembly complete. So I think that'll be one final stream to like get it to the point where it can get a serial number. And then I'll probably, like I was saying in the beginning, do some stuff to the cable management to get it a little bit neater so I can get stuff in and out quicker if need be. I do want to put in a clipper expander board. So I got some of these printed. You can buy them just from like Fabrico and a bunch of other sites. Did you not zoom in? Oh, okay, dude. But it's just a little board that breaks out and expands a bunch of I/O, especially since I'm using a BTT Pico, which is specifically designed with a chip that doesn't have a lot of GPIO ports. This can kind of break out some stuff so you can hook up extra thermistors, extra fans, a whole bunch of stuff to this. So I brought it. I got it off JLC PCB, and they pre-did a lot of the surface mount stuff, so I just need to put in mostly the connectors. So I'm a very proud papa right now. How much longer do we have in this print? 73% done. We can look at some of the stats while it's printing. The flow rate is staying pretty low, to be honest. It looks like we're mostly limited by acceleration, I think. There's just not enough large moves for it to actually get up to like 100 very often on such a small print. And so that's, since we're restricted by speed, we're not even seeing the flow rate get all that high. I could, you know, play some slicer tricks in order to, you know, do thicker line widths, so you don't have to do as many perimeters, and that can kind of get the flow rate up a little bit and bring down the print time. But then you're getting into like speed benchy type stuff. Estimated 11 minutes remaining. I don't know how accurate these status things are though. I was muted because I took a drink of water and didn't want you to hear all the glug glugs. But I was saying, yes, it's definitely really nice to get it printing. I was thinking back about all the little problems I had that I've been kind of like writing down so that I can remember them for the review and give feedback to Formbot and give feedback to the Kirigami guy, Christoph, who makes the Kirigami bed. And I've submitted a PR or a issue on the Formbot or the Voron 0.2 site, just talking about some of the issues I ran into. So maybe they can clarify some of the instructions. But the frame, getting it perfectly square, I think I tried at the very beginning to like make every single joint I put on super square, and that took forever, but then also by the time I got to the end of it, like I had a whole bunch of super tight joints and it wasn't square, so I had to, I don't know, I think I took it apart and kind of redid the bottom part of the frame the second time, and it was even better. And then I kind of basically took a bunch off and redid it a third time, and it was kind of perfect. So kind of going for a perfect goal on the first one with my first time using blind joints maybe was a little ambitious. But I did have some trouble with that. The bed, apparently the Formbot bed is just a little bit too thick. It's like 2.58 millimeters thick, I think is what I measured, and it's supposed to be closer to 2. I think it's partially because of the powder coating they're using. Powder coating they're using is causing that additional thickness. But that actually caused problems with a little bit of over constraints on the carriages. Basically, there was no wiggle room for the screws to allow the bed frame to kind of self-adjust on the carriages. So when you tighten everything down, I think it kind of squeezed up onto the frame, and then it caused not really binding, but it just kind of made it not skeet as well, if you know what I mean. So after I kind of filed out the holes a little bit more, I noticed that it could self-align a little bit more when I tightened it down to the rails, and then it really flowed really super smoothly. The electronics, I didn't have much problems with that. Getting everything installed was pretty good. The belts were a little more worrisome than really kind of problematic. Like, I didn't have any issues getting them run. It was just more worrying about, was I doing it correctly? But yeah, that was pretty cool. Not a whole lot of like really prohibitive issues. Yeah, so it'll definitely depend on like what angle you're looking at the print on to determine how good it looks. Did I remember to turn off object exclude for now until I get it set up in the slicer? That's the good thing, that there's thousands of V0s built by now. Yeah. And, you know, even though Formbot is considered kind of a budget one, a budget kit, I imagine they're selling a lot of them. Like, what percentage do you think are from LDO, and what percentage do you think are from Formbot? I think Jason from LDO put out a tweet talking about how many kits they had sold, but I don't think you can get those kind of numbers from Formbot. You can see on the site like how many of their different listings have been sold, but I don't know how accurate that is. But that's kind of why I was reaching out to companies to see if anybody wanted to offer up a kit to have videos and streams produced on it. And of course, I reached out to Jason at LDO, and then I kind of said, well, I might as well ask Formbot, you know, and they finally got back to me, and I was like, well, it's a budget kit, but I think a lot of people are going to get into building Core XYs, building custom machines, building Vorons with a kit like this. And so having some documentation on it, letting them know the good and bad, I think is good. ModBot has a Cyborg kit, so there's others, yeah. And who knows if I decide to sell one, yeah. There's Cyborg, there's Mellow, there's Blue Rolls, there is Physik, and LDO, and self-sourcing. So there's like at least 6 ways to get this printer. And then I think when you have a budget kit like this, like Renovic, whenever he's hopped in the chat, the reason he said he was considering it is because he wants to go from as base of a kit as possible and do something like the 24/7 like Speed Demon kind of printer. So why would he pay more for some of the stuff that comes in an LDO kit if he's just going to strip it off and not use it anyway? So maybe it would be more attractive to get a less expensive kit and, you know, start from there, because he's just gonna like get rid of half the stuff anyway. Yeah, if you're going to mod a lot, it's sometimes better to do that. I think it makes sense. And then another thing is like kind of thinking about it as like just a starting point. You know, like you can get a kit like this, and if you know that there's some really glaring issues with it, like maybe if the bed wasn't, you know, performing well or something like that, you can come in at $400 with this, spend $75 and get an LDO bed or a bed from another company and still be kind of technically under an LDO kit. But you know, I have an LDO kit below me right now that I'm going to start on basically as soon as I finish this guy up, and I think it does obviously I'll have a lot of value add in it. You know, the fact it comes with the Voron Revo by default is great. They've got like the 80XL already in the kit. Their Kirigami bed is 2 spec and is basically a lot more plug and play. They have really good documentation, so it's kind of like, what do you value? You know, some people I think value in getting the best price possible, and some people place more value in convenience and documentation, and you know, probably a company that supports the community more. I thought about getting a kit to start out with, but my layout is way different. Oh, you're using 2020. So have you seen the printers for ants? Printers, they're pretty crazy now. So basically, after this came out and people realized that they kind of liked the concept of these small printers, a bunch of people started making interesting mods. So you've got Dueling Zero, which is a dual gantry. So there's 2 gantries that can each print individually, so it's a whole repeated gantry. So instead of just two print heads, you have 2 whole gantries that can move along the same bed. What else do they have? Double Dragon, which is their IDEX, I guess. Crucible, triple lead screws in my V0. So it's a V0 with 3 lead screws, but I guess it's different than a Trident because that's called a solid fork. There's so many different like weird permutations. Here's a belted belted Z with 3 belts, I think. And the print is done. Let's see. I just sold my MK3 and grabbed the Formbot V0 to replace it. Already have a 2.4. Nice. Hey, Sir Frank, thanks for hopping into the stream. We just got our first print done on the printer. And I guess we can check out the quality a little bit now. I still need to get this this guy kind of working well. Well, not you. I like that I can kind of call out people's messages, but I don't know how like the overflow works. Overkill is triple lead screws, but isn't Salad Fork triple lead screws too? So this is a shrunken down Trident using 1515, and Crucible is inspired by Trident but converts the bed from a single lead screw, to triple. I mean, all of these things are overkill. All of these are just like weird and esoteric and like funky little permutations of machines. And you know, I love it though. I like that, you know, people can kind of do this kind of craziness. Tiny M V0 scaled up to 2020. That's what I was thinking is kind of like what you're going for. The belted Z would be nice for QGL quad gantry level, and yeah, I would be willing to build any and all of these printers, to be honest. I just think that they're fun, and it kind of speaks to how big and smart the Voron community is, that there's so many kind of crazy. So Pandora's box is almost a scratch build that uses most parts from the V0. It's a custom triple belted Z gantry, a whopping 142 millimeters of X, 127 of Y, and 127 of Z. It's slightly taller than the stock V0. It's just so crazy, triple belted. So there's multiple different triple belted Z mods. It's this is a flying gantry, so like a 2.4, I guess, but different than a 2.4. It's just so many kind of crazy permutations. Yeah, printers for ants is cool. I want to do something like at least a salad fork. Maybe after I do a trident, I'll do a salad fork, and maybe I'll do a micron. I don't know. Tiny T, tiny M, just, it's nuts. Let's take a look at this print. It's a little overexposed. How can I adjust that? Turn down the ISO a little bit. It's still very, very bright. You can pop them off. I don't suspect the bottom layer is going to look particularly great. Does that focus okay? So yeah, it did start extruding well on the first layer at first. Now I feel like I need to brighten it up a little bit more again. That's too much. You can see the bridging underneath there isn't the best, but passable. I like the texture that it gets from the print bed. I'll need to take that thing off. Hello, Truggy. Thanks for hopping into the stream. We just got our first print off the machine. Right now I have the Dragon High Flow in it. I popped in the Dragon High Flow because it is an option that's available for this machine, even though I do want to kind of check out the little CHC that comes with it. I don't know how well you guys can see that, but that's the first layer. You can see some layer inconsistencies here. I'm gonna have to determine what those are from. If you guys have any ideas what they're from, let me know. Here's the Y face. I mean, banding and ghosting doesn't look too bad. Here's the top surface. Maybe a little bit over extruded on the top surface. Yeah, definitely over extruded. Gonna have to play with the extrusion multiplier. The Voron symbol. Not bad for the first print. I can see it. Yeah, I'm fairly happy with it for the first print. You know, there's some interesting kind of like spots where it under extrudes that I wonder what that's coming from. This was just using the stock profile that comes inside of Orca Slicer. So, you know, zero tuning except for extrusion E-steps or E-rotations. And just using this profile, what did I change in here? I turned off exclude objects. Did I change anything? Yeah, I customized this a little bit, just turned down the temperature on this. I think the default PLA temperature was like 220, which is pretty high for this filament. That's like at the top end. Yeah, I barely touched anything. The speeds were 50 and 105 for the first layer, and then 120 outer wall, 200 inner wall, 200 sparse infill, 100 top surface. Might need more cooling. Slightly, yeah. I didn't look at the cooling at all, you know. I just hit go. We just sent it. What does this have for cooling? I don't really get the cooling settings in this slicer. It's kind of like Prusa Slicer, but a little bit different. So no cooling for the first layer. Min fan threshold is 100%. Always keep fan on. So I don't know if this is doing any dynamic throttling of the fan. I wonder if it's retraction was set at 0.8 millimeters. Z-hop was at 0.4, which is kind of high. I might turn that down. I wonder what cooling overhang threshold does. Was that back in filament settings? Here's what the speeds and feeds were in terms of the motion ability. We've got 20K, but I don't know if it's using the firmware mins and maxes or if it's using these, to be honest. Machine G code, we left it as is. And basic information. Yeah, so we didn't change much at all. You were talking about the cooling. What setting? The cooling overhang threshold. We have a wiki article for it. Oh, so this just describes how all of their auto cooling stuff works, which is like, I think it's basically Prusa's, but then they've modified it. Cooling for a specific layer, auxiliary part cooling fan. I'm gonna have to read up on this a lot. I look at charts like this and I just kind of get a little glossed over. Minimum layer time threshold. Enable slowing print down for better layer cooling. Disabling slowing print down for better layer cooling. Yeah, I'm gonna have to read up on that a little bit. I might also do some slicing in Prusa Slicer with their default Voron profile and see if there's any difference in qualities. That might be interesting just to see. It's the same slicing engine, but obviously Bamboo Labs and then Orca are kind of customizing stuff. You were going to say try Prusa Slicer. Let me see what I have installed on this guy. I think I had a whole bunch of the alphas in standalone mode. But you can get the actual installer now, I think, if you... Sure, Mr. Prusa. No, just give me the download. Where do I go? Full package. I think this gives you the non-standalone version. Hey Renovic, how's it going? We just got our first Voron cube off of the printer. No tuning. I tuned E-steps, and that's pretty much it. There's definitely some extrusion issues, inconsistencies where the layers look good. They look really, really good, but there's some kind of interesting areas that seem to really, really align with the tops and sides of stuff that we're gonna need to tune in a little bit. I'm happy with it for a very first printer. Very first print. Download, installers, save. I hate when it does this. It's like, oh, the print is complete, 100%, but then it's, I guess it's doing something on the back end to decompress. What are you doing? Stone folder. So I'll get this installed and probably run the same Voron cube with default settings through it and see if there's any differences. Any other suggestions of stuff I should run through? I already mentioned to Chris that I'm going to be doing the Andrew Ellis. What filament brand? This is MatterHackers Build Series PLA. So I have a lot of MatterHackers. I've always kind of just been pretty supportive of them. They have done a lot from what I recall for the community. I think, didn't ModBot used to work for MatterHackers, like running some of their print farms? But when I first went to Maker Faire, New York, Murph, Maker Faire, New York again, I met like Dave and Mara and some of the people from MatterHackers. And even though like I was brand new to 3D printing and had just started a channel and stuff, they were always super friendly, invited me to all the events. They produce some pretty good content and like teaching people how to, learn about 3D printers too. So I've recently just been trying to support them a little bit more. They are providing the LDO kit that I will be unboxing and building, another V0.2. So Orca does have some really nice built-in calibration. If you read through Andrew Ellis's guide, he does list some specific reasons he doesn't like some of the built-in calibration tools. Like the extrusion multiplier, he doesn't think that they have enough separation between the bottom layers and the top layers, which can kind of cause, if you have over squished bottom layers, it can kind of cause some weirdness on the top layers. So he has some reasoning behind why he likes, to do stuff. He's very, very kind of opinionated and specific about how he likes stuff done. So I think he runs the Voron PIF profiles. So all the Voron PIF profiles are kind of tuned by Andrew Ellis from what I've learned. But yeah, let's make a little bit of a to-do list. I mean, he goes through the tuning pretty well. First layer, pressure advance, extrusion multiplier, cooling, retraction. Then in the advanced portion, max volumetric flow rate, motor currents, max speeds, and excels. That covers most of the gamut. I guess after that, input shaping. I need to get object exclude set up. Would love a nice comparison between the kits. See what the extra money is getting. Good to know about Orca. Haven't gotten that far with it with my Trident. Okay. I think Orca's a really good starting point. Why is that so small? I guess I have different sizes set up in the different views. Yeah, that's teeny. There we go. I think Orca sites are pretty good, but Andrew Ellis just likes to be very, very, very specific in making sure that anybody who's producing parts for PIF can kind of meet these standards, which is understandable. You know, you're helping people get into 3D printers with this. So what else? You guys think of anything else I'm gonna need to do? We'll see how much of this I'm able to do on stream. But yeah, in terms of the comparison, I do plan on doing that. You know, even more basic kits are starting to have more value adds, and honestly, some of it they're kind of straight up copying from LDO. You know, like Kirigami Bed Kit is pretty standard. I don't think the Cyborg kit has Kirigami yet, but obviously they're like really banking on kind of having printed parts as being one of their big value adds. This has the umbilical now. I think most of the kits are starting to offer the umbilical as well. So I think LDO already has a Pico umbilical, which is nice. That's an extra MCU, so that's going to give you a whole bunch of extra kind of IOs that you could potentially use. Like, you know, there's a chamber thermistor on the umbilical, but with just my SKR Pico, I don't have anywhere to plug that in. There's no ADC ports available on the board. But if you have a Pico umbilical, that's an extra Pico that, you know, has a bunch of IO. So yeah, there are definitely some value adds with the LDO kit. So it's going to be hard to it'd be interesting to try to quantify that to see, you know. I think a lot of it is, where do you put your value? I already said this once on the stream, but I think some people value, like literally bottom line, what does it cost me out of the door price? Some people, that's all they can see. That's all they really care about. If they need to do a bunch of stuff during the build, replace stuff, they don't care. They just want that bottom line price. Some people place a lot more value in convenience, good documentation, higher quality parts out of the box. The LDO kit already has like a printed PCB heater. It has the thermal fuse already on there for you. So, you know, there's some really cool stuff, and it'll be interesting to kind of try to balance those and decide what is best for certain people. Micron, in your future, I want to build all the printer for ants. They're all so interesting and weird and unique, and I was just talking about them just a second ago. I don't know if I'm gonna, you know, move to dueling zeros or double dragon or anything like that first, but I think something like maybe a Micron and salad fork would be really, really cool. Maybe if I built a 2.4 and a Trident, I could do one or both of these afterwards. All of these are just crazy. SF was fun. Which one is SF? Oh, salad fork. You have a salad fork? Yeah, I think right now the Micron and the salad fork stick out in my head just because they connect so well back to the 2.4 and the Trident. I'd like to build a Trident and a 2.4, like full size. The dueling dragon isn't an IDEX. Yeah, the double dragon is an IDEX, right? Yeah, independent dual extrusion. It's the double dragon. So that's two separate print heads on one gantry, and this one is two separate gantries. It's just so ridiculous and kind of over the top, but I kind of love the idea that things are like this now. Like, there's the primary Voron, you know, four or five printers, and then there's all of these crazy offshoots, which are getting so much support that you can buy kits for some of these now. I just read your comment wrong. Yeah, they're also named in ways that are kind of confusing. F0 is really weird and interesting. Applying gantry 0 like the 2.4. The only difference from the Micron is that F0 is a V0 mod in the... Okay, so some of these are basically kind of the same printer, but one is a mod and another is a scratch build. So one is meant to be made from a V0 or a V0 kit, and some are meant to be like, you should probably just self-source most of this. And here comes the microphone stand again, just creeping into view. Mic stand has seen better days. Oh, every time I try to crank it down, it does this. Sorry for any noise. Oh, I'm pretty parched now. But I can talk about some of the kind of mods I already have on hand. I already showed Chris these. These are just, so now that's out of focus because I moved the focus for other stuff. These are just some M3 by 20 standoffs that are going to replace the brass ones that I kind of had on hand, and I didn't fancy putting heated inserts into those two 3D prints, so I just use these, and then I'll replace them with them. Nice little splash of blue. I showed him I printed out some skirt backers. So, you know, in an ideal world, I would have just printed the skirts with dual color, and these would be, you know, automatically on them. But since I got my parts from PIF, this is a good option. So have those. I have a bunch of kind of nicer wire sheathing. So we've got some like blue, that might be a little bit too light. I've got some black and blue, which I think might look good because it won't be too bright. All of this comes in like 1/2 inch or 12 millimeters and a couple of different kind of thicknesses and diameters. I've got some just plain black stuff. So I want to clean up the cables a little bit. Here's a really, really strong blue. That's like a very bright blue, but it kind of goes with the color of the printer decently. I don't mind if everything doesn't like perfectly color match, but I was thinking of replacing this and then maybe a couple other places where you can see wires when the panels are off. Yeah, a lot of this reminds me of like custom PC building and modding, so I'm kind of trying to bring some of my experience with that into this. They also have some nicer blue heat shrink tubing. I could individually sleeve all of the umbilical cables, but I don't know about that. That may be a little extra. But yeah, I just kind of want to have some fun with it. There is the V0.2 R1, which has a couple changes. So I already again showed Chris. This is the new cowling, which the main difference is the cooling is better. So the old one just used to have 2 ports and they were a bit smaller. So now this has 3 and they're much bigger. I want to get some sequins. Well, I have some sequins, but I think there's also, if I'm not mistaken, there are RGB sequins that I think West 3D sells. Let me check on that. West 3D RGB sequin. So the sequins are the LEDs for the print head. Desktop. So they do have an RGB version, but I think they run like 4 wires instead of 3 wires, so it's the wiring's a little bit different. How's the umbilical wire? Too stiff? That was some of the complaints about this kit. It's fairly stiff, yeah. if I unlock the motors, and move the print head around a little bit, like it's somewhat pliable. They also could have changed things from like some of their earlier revisions, but I think it's stiffer than what I saw when I watched somebody do a LDO build and they had the Pico Umbilical, which is kind of a same wiring setup as this. I don't know. I don't like this heat shrink tubing. I think it's kind of ugly, to be honest, and it's kind of flat and thick. Like it's way thicker than the actual cables are. Like you can kind of maybe pull it taut, but I don't know, does that give you a good impression of how kind of pliable, ductile the umbilical cables are? There's the strain relief up here, and then I printed this little mod down here that kind of gives you a little bit of extra strain relief. So it has a piece of strain relief right here, and then like a little filament guide for the Bowden tube. So yes, thanks. That looks like the heat shrink is longer than needed. Yeah, very much so. I mean, really, the heat shrink is just to cover the end of the end of the mesh, right? The end of the sleeving. And theirs, they put quite a bit on it, and it kind of makes this portion of it not very flexible. Because, you know, this is pinned at one end, pinned at the other end. There's no splice in this, so the heat shrink tubing isn't to protect any actual wiring. It's more so just to cover up the unsightly cables. They do have the end of the mesh is covered with one layer of heat shrink tubing. It looks like that has an adhesive on it. I don't know if you guys can see that. And then it has this heat shrink tubing that's just like a very kind of cover stuff up heat shrink tubing over top of it. So yeah, it makes it so that like this portion is very inflexible, but the middle portion is pretty good. Right next to the strain management is pretty good. So I don't know. Anything else I'm planning on doing to this printer in particular? I obviously need to finish the top hat and the panels. The skirts are already done. This guy, I've plopped the Revo in. I've got a couple Revo high flow nozzles, and then I've got, this is actually a, you know, I want to put back on the original CHC nozzle and do some max extrusion, like max flow rate tests. And see how much it might limit it compared to this, because this is like a $60 premium if you buy it on their website. I think it's like $3.99 or $3.49 if you get the base one, and then if you add a Dragon it's like $50, and if you add a Dragon high flow it's like $70, I think is what it is. So you know, like some people, there's a lot of people I talk to who watch my videos and they're like, I understand that you're probably going to recommend I move up and get the nicer one and save up for a little bit longer, but they're like, I can't, you know, I've saved up $400. Now I need to start spending my money on something else or saving up for something else. What is the best thing you can get? And that might be this, it might be the Cyborg kit, it might be another kit, but there's definitely some people who, you know, you want to say, hey, if you spend $200, you know, you get this more. And they're like, I don't have $200 more to spend. So it's an interesting kind of prospect when reviewing products, trying to not just recommend the highest price thing all the time. And remember to unmute myself after I take this drink. Okay, so first print is done. There are obviously some issues with the quality of this print. I don't know if it showed up any better on this camera. No, it's just highly overexposed. I'm still trying to kind of figure out the best streaming setup for this limited space. It feels like when I get the lighting good for one camera, the other camera's too blown out, and vice versa, kind of like whack-a-mole things kind of going on. If anybody has any questions about anything about the printer so far, I've got all the streams in a playlist. I've been trying to bring up every single problem I'm having, all the benefits I'm seeing. You know, like there are some good points of this kit. Most of the wiring is pretty much pre-wired or pre-crimped and mostly the right length. And it made wiring very easy compared to what I've seen people, like especially if you're doing a scratch build comparison. Like if you could build a scratch build for somehow cheaper than this at the same quality, but you didn't have pre-crimped wires, I would still say go for this, because like that's like hours worth of work crimping all those wires. Probably red filament would be easier to see quality. Once I have the enclosure on, I do have all of this build series from MatterHackers, so I can do, you know, red, blue, and black, and that'll probably read way better on camera. You're right. I do have some of the filament I want to use for the LDO kit. I've got a bunch of Polymaker, ABS. I was thinking about using ASA, but I don't think their color lineup for ASA is quite as extensive as what they have for ABS. Oh, let me see if I can get all of this in view. So we have this green, which is kind of like, you can see if you can guess what kind of color scheme I'm going for. Then we have, I'm going to use just the black ABS from MatterHackers for like a base color. Then we've got some of the Galaxy Dark Gray. So that's got like a sparkle in it. And then we've got some of their gold. And I'm hoping to get my hands on one of their green extrusion kits. And the color scheme is going to be kind of a Master Chief inspired color scheme. So the green extrusion, some green highlights. I don't want to over green it, but then some gold, black, and gray. And I really want to like go all out in printing a lot of kind of multiple colors besides just the one accent color for that build. So in addition to kind of being, you know, a higher quality kit, I think it'll also, like, I'll put more into making it kind of look cool and custom, which I think comes, you know, naturally when you're doing like your second build. But yeah, thanks for everybody who was tuned in. I think I'm just about ready to wrap it up. Somewhat early for me tonight. It's 10:49 local time for me and on the East Coast of the United States. Pretty happy. Got a working printer. Got our first print. Some tuning to do, but you know that's comes along with the process of building any printer, even ones that you know you take out of the box. Generally, you want to tune them up. There's some cable management I want to take care of. There's putting on the panels and the top hat, which are kind of the last two steps to doing things. But overall, I'm pretty happy. Thanks for everybody who's been following along with the stream. I have a playlist of all the streams. If you are interested in any kind of particular part and seeing what I have had trouble with or what I've really liked, you can go back and watch those. I will do a video that's kind of a review video towards the end of the build. But yeah, thank you for everybody who's tuned in. Hit the thumbs up button, the like button, subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks for everybody for tuning in. I will see you in the next video or stream. Peace.